Hey everyone, welcome to today's webinar. How is everyone doing? Beth, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I am in Southern Illinois today. We're still on the road with new grandbabies. So
Oh, it's so exciting. I am in Houston and the weather here is it's dark. My ring light is not doing any kind of justice because it is so incredibly dark and gloomy, but thank God for goodness for ring lights. I'm so excited
yeah,
for this webinar today. Cool and complex things you can do with forms, specifically in gravity forms.
yeah.
So how are you feeling about it, Bet? Are you
I
excited?
am excited. I am kind of a gravity forms nerd, so I love talking about this stuff with people. So it'll be cool. This is the first time I've done this presentation, so I've had a lot of fun putting it together.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'm pretty sure that everyone in the chat, so I'm going to just give a quick shout out to everyone who's in the chat over here on Crowdcast. If you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, I will check that out once Beth starts her presentation because unfortunately I can't do too many things at once. So hi to Kristen, hi to Chris, Beth Livingston, Dawson, Robert, Stephen, Melanie, Graham, Adam, Kim, Melanie. Oh, Melanie again. There's two Melanies. No, one.
No,
Sorry.
I think it's
All
one.
right.
Yeah.
Well, hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Again, we are super excited to talk about all of the cool and complex things you can do with gravity forms with Beth Hannon. But really quick, I just want to get a couple of words about GoWP in case you're not that familiar with us yet. So at GoWP, we create happiness for digital agencies and we help them become more profitable. Whether you're looking to grow your agency or grow your team with a developer, a copywriter, a designer, or a project manager, or you're just interested in outsourcing services so you can focus on growth, we got you covered. We've also built a digital agency owners community. It is an active community of more than 1,900 agency owners where we hold regular group calls, webinars like this one with Bet today. Bet is a super active member as well of our community, and mastermind sessions. And you can grow your agency today with GoWP. And I will drop that link on the chat. And yeah, if you have any questions about partnering with GoWP and how we can help you grow your agency, feel free to reach out. I see Beth already has a question, and that's awesome. Beth, sorry, not Beth. There's a Beth and there's a Beth. Oh my goodness. So Beth and anyone else who has a question, you can drop them on the Ask a Question toggle over here on Crowdcast, or you can just drop them in the chat, and Crowdcast itself will prompt you to put that. You just have to click on a quick link and it will prompt you to ask the question into the toggle. And if not, I'll add that. You can drop them in the chat. That's totally fine. So a few notes about the webinar today. Again, I will be watching the chat. And if you have any questions, just throw them in there and I'll get them to Beth. And if it's a question related to what she's saying and I'm able to interrupt, I'll get that in there. But if not, we'll just keep it into the for the last bit. There's going to be a Q&A. So yeah, let's get to what we're here today. So Bet is the founder of BH Business Websites, an agency that focuses on WordPress accessibility, gravity forms, and serves clients from across the US and Canada. They offer design, development, managed hosting, and custom development of form-based features. So Bet is based in Bend, Oregon, but right now she's in Illinois and traveling the country. And she's a local WordPress meetup organizer in Oregon. But now where are you now? You're in Illinois?
Well, we've still been doing Bend meetups while I'm on the road, but
Oh,
yeah,
that's so cool.
because we're still remote there. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Beth. I'm really excited for
Thanks.
today. I see we have some people who are very interested in how in gravity form. For example, Adam Jacoby is already talking about gravity form in the chat and how it has streamlined their nonprofit operations considerably. And he's very excited to hear from a leader in accessibility for the same. So welcome back.
Great, thank you. Let me get stuff started sharing, and then we'll go, whoop, get over to the slideshow. Are you seeing the slides now?
Yeah, we're good to go.
Perfect. All right.
Take it away.
So Joanne, thanks for the great introduction. If folks want to be in touch with me, if you have questions that come up later, you can find me on Twitter at Beth Hannon, and bhmbizsites.com is our website, and you can contact me there too. I'm always happy to chat with folks. So as agency owners and freelancers, we're really in the business of selling solutions to clients. And when you're selling solutions, you have to know what it's possible to do. You can't sell a solution to a client unless you know that it exists and that it's achievable. And so in this webinar, what I really want to do is outline some of the things that you can do for clients with form plugins that you might not yet know that you can do. And as I'm, I kind of outline some of these things, and toward the end, we get into some increasing complexity. Your eyes may glaze over. I'm really aware of that because I kind of nerd out on it, and it gets kind of deep. But always, I think, come back to this question: what could this do for my clients or for my organization? So I hope that's helpful. I'm going to talk today about gravity forms, and you may be able to do some of the things that I'm going to describe today with Ninja Forms or WP Forms or other forms plugins. But gravity forms is what our team uses, and that's what I'm most familiar with. I do think it's the most extensible. In other words, you can build upon it the most in terms of the WordPress forms plugins. And I think it has the largest ecosystem of third-party plugins. And as a lot of you know, our agency is also really concerned about accessibility, and Gravity Forms had made some great strides in becoming what I think is now the most accessible form plugin on WordPress for WordPress. So today we're going to talk about Gravity Forms. So here's our menu or our journey map today. I'm going to talk a little bit about Gravity Forms and what you can do with it, and a little bit about its ecosystem of some of the third-party plugins. And even just introducing you to a third-party plugin that you didn't know existed might already give you some ideas for how you might use Gravity Forms for your clients. I'm going to talk a little bit about building blocks for complex features, that is, tools within forms for leveling them up a notch or two. And then I'm going to describe 5 complex implementations that our team has done for clients. And by that, I mean not just supercharged forms, although I do mean that, but also some projects that essentially become a web app in themselves. So just about everyone is familiar with using forms for a simple contact form. But forms can do a lot of powerful things for you if you want or need to take them to the next level. So this is not an exhaustive list, but here are some of the things that Gravity Forms can do. You can export entries as a CSV. So for example, you're taking an event registration and you can export that out. You can, to be able to manipulate that data or calculate with that data in, say, Excel. You can take payments, not just with the big gateways like Stripe and PayPal and Square, but all kinds of other payment gateways, many of which are more popular in other parts of the world. You can send data, well, you can send data just about anywhere, really. You can send it to CRMs like HubSpot and Pipedrive. You can send it to email platforms like MailChimp. You can send it to cloud drives like Google Drive, to Slack. You can send SMS text messages. And via Zapier, you can do just about anything, make any connection that Zapier will let you make with Gravity Forms data. You can register new users on your site. A lot of people don't know that that can happen. And also that you can create new posts, new pages, new CPT. You can't create the CPT itself, but you can create new entries, CPT entries in either published or draft status with a form. And think about how powerful that can be as you're beginning to put out things. You can create polls and quizzes. You can capture partial entries. A partial entry is where somebody comes to your website and they start filling out the form, but they don't finish. They never click submit, but you can still capture that information. And a save and complete is when you have a really long form and you can enable that for your form. It gives the user an option to click a little link down near the button and it says save and complete. They get an email with a link to come back to your website and just pick up where they left off. And it's very powerful, really very handy. You can use webhooks to send and receive data to external APIs. There are product fields, so you could do some light e-commerce. You can upload images and files and even upload images and files into HIPAA compliant servers. You can take signatures and you can put in HTML fields, which really, that sounds like a small thing, but you can put all kinds of things into HTML fields, text and images and even little scripts and other things. So Gravity Forms itself has over 40 official add-ons. Now, a lot of those, of course, have different licensing levels, include different add-ons. So if you want to take Stripe payments, you need the Stripe add-on. And that's really a great way to structure this, because then you don't need to bloat out your site with everything Gravity Forms will do. You can put in just the add-ons that you need for a particular implementation. But then you can do even more with a large number of third-party add-ons. I'm going to talk about just 7 of them here today, but there are tons and tons and tons of them out there, and you can explore around. Gravity View is a plugin that will let you display entries. So anytime someone clicks the submit button on your form, it creates what's called an entry in the dashboard. So you can display entries with Gravity View. More than that, you can search and filter entries. So you can set it up so that the user on the front end so say you have a directory, you've made entries and every entry is a directory listing. You can create a search bar there and people can search your directory on the front of the website. But you can also search and filter, limit the display of what you show as the site owner. You can set up a default limitation. You can also Gravity Forms. Now, these are things that people don't maybe always know that Gravity View will let you do. You can set it up so that the user who submitted an entry can do front-end editing of that entry. Say I set up that directory, and now I have that so that the person who created it is set in the dashboard as the author. When they come to the website, I can display a link to let them front-end edit that. We'll take a look at a little bit of that a little bit later. There's maps and location searching, so you could do a directory where people are searching by city or by zip code. You can import entries into Gravity Forms as a CSV. So we often talk about you can export entries with Gravity Forms, but Gravity View lets you import entries. So I can move them, for example, from another Forms plugin or from a different type of data altogether, maybe from a membership system. I can pull them into Gravity View. That's huge. You can bulk edit entries and you can perform math and calculations. Gravity View does an amazing amount of things. So it's a really cool plugin. Gravity Flow lets you set up a workflow process with forms. Typically, this is for multiple users. So multiple steps. So their classic example on their website talks about a vacation request form. So the employee fills out the vacation request, it goes to their supervisor for approval, who then sends it to HR, and then the notification comes back to the employee that it's all approved. And the thing that I think is most powerful about all of that is that Gravity Flow includes reminder emails to nag the user to complete their step. We are waiting on you to complete this, right? That's one of the most powerful pieces. So you can set up and schedule those to go out in any kind of frequency you'd like. It's a really huge thing. Gravity Perks is a collection of more than 38 small plugins that do very small but very specific things. Like you can limit the dates that are available on a date picker. So maybe you only want to allow people to pick weekdays and not weekend days, or vice versa. You could do that with a Gravity perk. You can allow for conditional logic using dates. You can create nested forms. And one of their newest plugins is called Notification Scheduler, which lets you drip out email notifications like sending reminders. That's going to be very powerful, I think. And there are a lot of people don't realize that there are a ton of free custom code snippets available on the Gravity Perks website, including some that allow you to do things like inventory control. Say you're going to sell tickets to a concert, but you don't want to oversell. So you can set up the concert tickets as a product and only allow selling X number of them. Huge pieces. And you just need to go, if you're working with Gravity Forms, you should surf by Gravity Perks and just look at all the different things that they will do. Gravity PDF allows you to export a Gravity entry as a PDF file. So someone comes to your site, they fill out the form, and then it puts that entry, that data, into a PDF. And you can use any of their default templates. They have some really nice ones, but you can also style your own template with HTML and make it look any way you need it to look with HTML. They also build custom templates for you. So if you need someone to build it out, that's kind of their business model, is they will build the templates for you if you need custom templates, if you need that. Fillable PDFs does something a little different, and that is where you take a fillable PDF, so a PDF file that's been specially created to have those form fields, and often they have like a light blue tint to them. You could download it and you could type into them. And this plugin will let you create a Gravity form that will have a field on the form for every field on the PDF, map them together at the end, and then deliver to you a PDF that looks like someone typed it all in. We'll see an example of this later. Entry automation allows you to do a ton with Gravity Forms entries. You can schedule an export of all the form entries as a CSV file and have it automatically emailed. We typically do this with event registration. So we will schedule we got an event registration going, 10 people have registered, but on a regular basis, we're exporting as a CSV or an Excel file those entries and emailing that off to the registrar that's our client. But entry automation allows you to do some other things with entries as well, including deleting specific form fields so you can comply with GDPR, or you can actually combine export the data and then auto delete it so that you're complying with your requirements for GDPR or HIPAA or something like that. And finally, JetSloth. I love the name of that company, JetSloth. JetSloth makes a great tool, bulk actions for Gravity Forms. If your form gets very long or complex, it can be hard to move fields or sections of fields around in the form editor. You've got to move them one at a time. You've got to drag and drop them. It's a little difficult. This plugin helps with that. It'll allow you to select multiple fields and move them around on your form, but also it'll let you copy entire single fields or multiple fields from one form to another form. And this can be really handy if you've got a bunch of fields that have a lot of settings on them, a lot of conditional logic, for example, and you need to maintain those settings when you're moving them around. So super handy. And there are tons of other third-party plugins out there that allow you to do some really cool other specific things. Just start looking around when you have a need. And typically, the way you find these is that you just start Googling around Gravity Forms and Stripe subscriptions or whatever it is, and then you find the other things that are out there to help make that happen. So I want to start shifting to talking about some conceptual building blocks for doing more things, more complex things with Gravity Forms. And these building blocks can become even more powerful when you start to use them together. And I'm just going to talk about 3 today. The first one is pre-populating or automatically filling in fields. Maybe you've been on a site where you go to a sales page, you're going to check out, and it automatically populates your address or some other information about you because it was already there. We're talking about that sort of thing, automatically filling in some fields for you. Gravity Forms offers you a number of ways to do that. One of the most interesting to me is query string. You can set up a for most of these, you're identifying what's called a parameter. And essentially, it's just a way to make a name for the field that you want to populate. And then the URL, in the URL that you are going to link to the form on, you can add your data. So say you have a lot of staff on your team, and what you want to do is you want to have one contact form, and that contact form has a to email field, an email field that is like where the form is going to go, the to field. And on the staff page, you have a little link under each person that says contact me. And that URL is a little bit different. It goes to the same contact form on your website, but it's a little bit different URL because it will have question mark, and then it'll say to email, the parameter that we set on the field, equals that person's email address. And that value part of the URL in that example is what's going to be pre-populated in the field. So it's really a cool thing. We have some examples of how we've used that before. You can also do that in shortcodes and blocks as well. You can set a parameter. Those are going to be useful in some different situations. Say you have the same form sitting in various places on your website, but you want to have some default values that are a little different for each individual embed of the form. So you could set those that way with your shortcode or in your blocks. It is possible to dynamically populate a fields via webhooks. Now, I won't say too much about that, but as you might imagine, that could be a very powerful tool. And finally, this is not. You can see on the bottom of the slide, there's the documentation link for how to dynamic population, and Gravity Forms has some great documentation. There's the link to that documentation about pre-population. They don't have this one on there, but it's one that we use a lot. So it is possible to pre-populate something like a date field with a merge tag. So instead of trying to use a parameter, though, you would set a default value and make the default value the merge tag for today's date, and then lock down the field so that the user can't change it. So for instance, maybe you're getting a signature on some kind of an acknowledgement, a policy acknowledgement or something like that. You don't want that user to mess around with the date, and you want the accurate date. You don't want the user's mistaken date on that. So you can pre-populate that with the date merge tag and lock it so that the user can't edit it. So the second, the second piece for, these is hidden and administrative fields. So these fields collect data, but they're not shown to the user. They're completely away from where the front end user will see them. So hidden fields hold functionality on the displayed form, but they're not visible. And administrative fields are only visible and usable on the back end of the website. So when you're working in the WordPress dashboard. So you could put a hidden field together with dynamic population. So say maybe you want to have, you want to track what landing page a user is coming from when they fill out your lead gen form. So you might put a hidden field on the form and give it the parameter of source. And then every landing page will have a different value for their source parameter. And then the person clicks that link, they go to your lead gen form, it automatically fills in the source field with the value from the page they came from. So you would see it, but it would never be seen on the form by the user. And this is the last building block I'll mention, and it's huge, and it's conditional logic. And maybe some of you are familiar with those, but you can see in this example, I'm hiding the name field, the main project content name. I'm hiding that field by default. And then over on the right, I have the conditional logic enabled, and I say, show this if the question above that, are you the main contact, is no. Right? This is our own project intake field where we're taking information for clients, from clients about their new projects. And so it'll only show up if the user says no, and then it'll ask them, well, who is the contact? We routinely use conditional logic for things like we'll ask a user, they're going to register a whole team of people on a form. And we'll say, how many people are you registering on your team? And then through conditional logic, the form will only display the data fields like the name and email address and role for exactly that many team members. Note that you can use conditional logic also with hidden fields that the user doesn't see. So building on that landing page example from just a little bit before, if somebody comes, maybe if somebody comes from landing page A, I want to show them a special extra field, but hide it for everyone else. So I can do that with conditional logic. Conditional logic sounds so simple at one level, but it can be very powerful. And with great power comes great ability to become confused. So if your form starts to have a lot of conditional logic on it, it's possible to start creating multiple conflicts, and it can be a bear to untangle all of those. I think I saw Chris Hodger on the call earlier, and he's helped me a number of times where we had conditional logic things that just got so way out of whack. So what you want to do when you're thinking about conditional logic, ideally you're going to map that out ahead of time as much as possible, but you're also going to try and keep that conditional logic as simple as possible. So there are a lot of other building blocks, but pre-populating hidden fields and conditional logic, that's a really great start. So as you're thinking, I'll just throw in a few tips here. So as you're thinking about building more complex forms, one of the first things you want to think about is reducing friction. And by that, I just mean thinking about the user experience. Primarily, that's hiding any unnecessary or unneeded fields. So in that previous example where I asked how many team members and then displayed exactly the number of fields that would be needed, that's a lower friction than if I had the option, all of the fields listed there for 10 team members, and now as the user, I have to scroll through all those empty fields. And, it's also about thinking about sort of moving people more logically through the forms so that they're putting their data in. It's thinking about making sure you have the fields that conditional logic is going to depend on high enough up in your form too. So reducing friction. And another thing to think about is to always be thinking about how you can idiot-proof your form. And I realized last week that this is a kind of a uniquely American phrase. I was talking to somebody from Belgium, but you kind of almost have to have a dim view of human nature and assume that if people can mess it up, they will mess it up. So you want to be looking for ways that you can be super clear about your instructions for places where things might be ambiguous or vague, where people won't know what they're supposed to do next. And then another is to also thinking about how you can really guide people to create good data for your client or for whoever's getting that data. So for instance, sometimes allowing people to go free form when you're asking them to put in data can create problems later. For instance, if you're taking a registration, you're taking dietary preferences. If you might want to put in radio buttons so it's a forced choice. They have to choose one of the options between no limitations, vegetarian and vegan, because I guarantee you, if you allow people to just write in what they want, somebody will write in veg, V-E-G, and then somebody's going to have to go back and contact them and ask them, did they mean vegetarian or vegan? And this also means that you should think about how people might cheat the system. We work with a lot of faith-based nonprofits, and you would think that wouldn't be the case, but you all want to take care that you're not creating opportunities for people inadvertently or intentionally to pay less than they should, or not give the data that they're supposed to give. And my final tip is just beware of caching. Caching, whether that's site caching with something like WP Rocket, or server caching like Varnish, or other types of other types of caching, caching can create problems for forms, and it can cause problems with the pre-population of forms, that automatically filling in fields, but it can also unexpectedly cache other users' inputted data. So then you're not getting accurate information from the second or third user. And of course, that's really problematic when you have forms that are taking payments. So best practice is not to cache forms at all. Now, if you have only a few forms on your website, then it's easy to just add those URLs. Most caching plugins or server caching have places for you to exclude URLs from caching, and you should do that. But if you have a lot of forms on your website, for instance, some of our clients are doing event registrations where they're doing 2 or 3 webinars a month, and things are going up and down a lot. There are a lot of forms coming up and going down. So you might want to use the plugin called Fresh Forms for Gravity, and that'll exclude all pages that have a gravity form on them. Now, you need to be careful, because if you use that plugin and it's auto excluding, then you have a gravity form on every page of your website, say in the footer as an email sign up, you're going to inadvertently exclude everything from caching, which would be not helpful, probably not what you want. Do be aware that the Fresh Forms for Gravity plugin does not work with some caching plugins, the ones that don't support do not cache page constant, most notably the Breeze plugin at Cloudways. And there are some ways at Cloudways and some other places to utilize header cookies for excluding gravity forms. And if somebody, that's getting really technical, if somebody wants to know more about that, they can message with me. But there are some workarounds so that you can exclude every page of your site from caching that has a gravity form on it through some header cookies. So here's the implementations that I'm going to briefly walk through, the more complex implementations that our team has done, mostly in an order of increasing complexity. So we'll look at an event registration, a fillable PDF, a multi-step, multi-decision maker process for registration, an API integration, and then really what has became a small web app for DEI reporting within a client website. So if you think about event registration, and maybe you think about the registration you did for this webinar, well, all you had to put in was your name and your email address. That's on one end of the scale. Registrations can really be a lot more complex than that. I'm not going to show you screenshots of the actual form, but I'm going to describe to you what the form did with tons of these building blocks that we've already talked about, some of the third-party plugins, some of the conditional logic and other pieces. And this is for a client, a national nonprofit. And this was the last event they did before COVID came. It was a 3-day in-person event where most people were going to stay overnight. So there were 3 categories of registrants which had different pricing levels. So youth under 18, young adults 18 to 30, they were wanting to encourage 18 to 30-year-olds to attend, so they got a price break, and then regular adults over 30. All got different pricing levels. If someone registered in the under 18 category, then there were more than 20 additional fields that were shown to them, only them, with conditional logic. And it's actually showing them to their parents, everything from health history to emergency contacts to permission slips to the code of conduct acknowledgement, all of that, just for the under 18s. Over 18s had fields that were shown only to them, offering them the option to add children age 5 to 12 for meals, with the assumption that those children would stay in the room with them. Young adults and adults, regular adults, could also choose commuter options with 2 different meal plans, so that one of the questions really early on the form is, will you be staying over? And once you tell us you're an adult or young adult, are you staying over? Are you staying over, or are you a commuter? People who indicate that they will stay over on the site are then offered a choice of double or single rooms at 2 different pricing levels. If they chose a double room, they were invited to put in a roommate's name. all of the on-site housing rooms have quantities limited with inventory control. There was a venue that had a limited number of rooms, so we had to do inventory control so that they didn't oversell those rooms. All registration types and rooms, this is where it started to get really even more complex. So if you think about it, every type of room, every commuter plan, all of those are product fields. Then all of those types and rooms and product fields all had early, regular, and late pricing by date. All of them had conditional logic that allowed you to only see the pricing for that option during the current window when it was valid. Information was collected about food allergies, and if there were food allergies, then a special notification went to the dietary director. There was an invitation to volunteer, and if the person indicated that they did want to volunteer and for what, then a special notification went to the volunteer coordinator. A customized and branded receipt of email notification went to the registrant, indicating their selections from all of those options. And then they also got a reminder 3 days before the event with directions to the venue and instructions for checking in. And then there was a weekly CSV export of all the registrations so far to the register. So as you can see, things got really complex really quickly. And there are what we see is that these types of super complex events often are coming from organizations where they used to have people doing all of this with pencil and paper and forms, and it was taking a lot of time and energy and volunteer hours to put all of that together. Now, there may be some out-of-the-box event registration and a much simpler registration that a lot of organizations can use. But once an organization needs something like this level of customization to begin to sort that all out, then a custom form like this is probably a better route. Take a deep breath. Okay. Here's an example of using fillable PDFs, the plugin fillable PDFs. If you are a parent, you have probably filled out a form like this one at one time or another. This is the required pre-admission health history form used by every daycare in the state of California. So you can see that it's a fillable PDF because you can see the light blue little fields. All of those represent a fillable field on the PDF form. So you have to start with a PDF that's already fillable. Now, a lot of people don't realize that the fillable PDFs plugin for Gravity Forms does this amazing, super cool thing. You can upload this fillable PDF, and I would actually suggest that the very first thing you want to do is make sure your form is prepared well. The first few times we did this process, we ended up going back and editing the fillable PDF a number of times. But if you upload that fillable PDF, you can ask this plugin to rough out all of the fields and Gravity Forms that you need for that form. Think about that. This health history form is 3 pages long. So you can see how many fields are there in just a tiny little, the first top half of that. Think about how much time saving that is to automatically rough out all of the fields that you need for the Gravity Form to work with this fillable PDF. Now, it's making its best guesses, so it's not always right. But it's a huge time saver for putting together the form. So once you have the form ready and then you have a Gravity form that might look something like this on your site, right? It looks just like a Gravity form. This is the Presbyterian Early Learning Center in Sunnyvale, California. And so there's a form on the front of the website where the parent is just going to fill out that form. Then after they click submit, on the back end, we've set it up so that that fillable PDF template is there, and the form is mapping the data that was inputted into the form so that it comes out looking like this. Now, while this particular client had us keep the various PDF forms completely separate, they wanted the health history form over here, and they wanted the emergency notification thing over here. They wanted them to be separate Gravity forms. Think about how this could have been really leveraged to create one fairly long Gravity form where the parents only put in their names once, their email addresses once, the child's name and age and birth date only once, and then every single form that was needed, PDF that was needed, would automatically get generated. It's a very cool thing. And then in the end, the PDF the PDF can just sit in the dashboard if you wanted to, but it's attached in this case to two separate email notifications, one that went to the facility and one that went to the parent as a copy of the form. So now I'm going to describe a multi-step, multi-user process. Using Gravity Flow, you can create fairly complex workflows where one person might initiate something and then someone else makes a response and then another person, and you can map this out where multiple people, there's a process that needs to be followed. So as I mentioned, Gravity Flow's base example is as an employee requesting vacation. We utilized Gravity Flow to set up a multi-step, multi-user process for a cross-country running camp for high school students. This particular client was limiting attendees based on membership in a particular association of running clubs. And it was the coaches of the various running clubs that were the ones to initiate the registration. So it was the coach was vetting, this youth is a member of our club, I'm registering them. Now, some of the clubs were paying for the camp for their own students through the club, and others were having the parents pay. So the coach on their initial registration form indicates who is going to be the payer. And I don't think we ask, is it the parent paying or is it the club paying? And if it's the club, they need to give us that person's email address, because it was not always the coach themselves. Sometimes it was the treasurer. If the parent is paying, we're already asking for the parent's email address. So the coach puts in some limited information about the student. We get the email address of the payer and the parent. So let's say the coach registers a youth named Julie Freeman. The next step in the process is that the paying party gets an email with a link for them to come to the website and pay for Julie. Now, the paying party might be her parent, or it might be someone from her running club. That person continues to get an email reminder to come and pay for Julie every 7 days until that payment is completed. Almost immediately after the payment is completed, the parent guardian gets an email that they must come to the website and fill out a separate health and permissions form that will include their signature. They receive a reminder every 7 days until they come and complete the health form. Once the parent guardian completes the health and permissions form, a notification email goes out to the coach, the camp staff, and the parent that the registration is complete. Now, I will note that when we set this up with the camp staff and the coaches, none of us really thought about some parents would leave everything to the last minute. But in the 2 weeks before the camp started, we ended up having to bump that nag email to come fill out your form for the parent down to every 24 hours to try and get them all done. And even then, there were some parents that showed up on site and had to fill out the form. I also use Gravity Flow as a process on my own website to pitch Termageddon. So I created a form to kick off the process that only I see. That includes the client's name and their business name and their email address. This automatically kicks off a workflow that requires the client to come back to my website and fill out a Gravity form where they either they do one of three things. They have to sign up for Termageddon, request more info on Termageddon or privacy policies, or sign the handy dandy release of liability that the Termageddon folks provide about you really should have a privacy policy, but you're releasing me from liability if you don't. And Gravity Flow will nag them every 7 days until they come and fill out that form, making one of those choices. This has been amazing. And I learned early on that I shouldn't put too many clients into it at one time because it really did kind of get them to reply. I later refined that process to actually take more information about the client on that kickoff form, and then send out different different notifications for the next step for businesses and nonprofits, as well as then different emails to people that might currently have a privacy policy that maybe they copied off the internet, and people that have no policy at all. So I could refine that and create this really cool way to keep nagging people until they came to fill out a form without me having to do it. It is possible to connect a Gravity form to an external platform via API. Now, this, of course, is something that requires custom coding. It's not something out of the box for Gravity forms that you'll have to hire or do yourself. But one of our clients is Mennonite Insurance Services. They offer insurance to members of Mennonite and related churches in California and Oregon. While we have other Gravity forms on their website for someone to request a quote. Now, that's technical language in the insurance industry. A quote means that you've given them enough information that they're going to give you a firm price for which they will offer the policy. What they were asking us to build was a quick live estimate. So in the insurance industry, the estimate is not binding, and it's simply providing enough information for the system to kick back an approximation of your premium and so that you can be shopping around, right? So the underwriting system that this client uses to build estimates and quotes has an API that we were able to tie into. So a user can come to the website, fill out enough information on the form, things like the square footage of their house and what year it was built in and what zip code, their address, other information about the house itself. And then they can submit that form and get back immediately on the confirmation page at how much the premium would be. And then they can put their name and email address in if they would like for Mennonite Insurance to contact them about moving forward with a more formal quote or getting a policy. Note that this implementation sends data, both sends data to the external system, the data about the property and its location and the valuation, and it pulls data from the external platform into the website, the estimate. Now, that data that's pulling back isn't really related to Gravity forms. That's just PHP, displaying that on the page. But it is possible to kind of use Gravity forms with these APIs, and there are all kinds of use cases for setting up these external APIs. And pretty much anytime there is an API that exists, and you're going to collect information and you want to send it somewhere that you don't already have an add-on or Zapier access to send it to, you can begin to do this really cool. You can send it to other websites, for example. All kinds of really cool things that you can do with that API. And finally, this is a little more on the DEI reporting, almost web app that we built for our client. So our client is the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. They're a mainline Protestant denomination in the United States and Canada. They have commitments to a wide diversity and inclusion on their boards and their committees. And we built out this reporting system to help the oversight teams keep track of that diversity using Gravity forms, especially the polling add-on. That's what gives us these fancy percentage bars. Gravity View to display the entries, along with custom user roles to limit what people can see and what they can edit. And of course, I had to do all of my screenshots for this. They're all dated because, of course, we can't take you into the live web app to do that anymore. And you won't see very many entries and things because we didn't put a lot of test data in there. But here's how it works. So GNC stands for General Nominating Committee. That's the oversight group that's responsible for diversity and inclusion. And the Christian Board of Publication is one of their boards. The executive or staff that's coming to this website into the reporting system to put in data is given a WordPress user account with a custom user role specific to this particular board. So the user role is a custom user role for the Christian Board of Publication. When that user logs in, they are redirected to this landing page for their board or committee. They don't get to see anybody else's pages. They don't get to see any other board data. They don't even get to see any other pages on this website. And this website has a lot of other kind of internal, organizational functionality in it. They don't get to see any of that. They're really restricted via that custom user role just to this page. At the top of the page is displayed a block of information about this particular board. This is an entry into a Gravity form, the board info form. So we have one form for all of the boards across the whole site. This particular block is a Gravity view. It's filtered so that it only displays this one entry. Right? This is the short code for what it looks like. I'm inserting the Gravity view, and inside the Gravity view settings, I've told it what form to look for. But in the short code, I'm saying, look for field 1 and only display the entries that have the value of Christian Board of Publication. Right? So that's how it's only displaying this one entry. Now, note the bottom there where it says edit entry. That's because this was set up so that the user role for this Christian Board of Publication, the user role was set as the author of this particular entry. Now, they were not actually the original author. We put it together for them, right? But the entry was created, and then the authorship of the entry was reassigned to them in the WP admin dashboard. Okay, so that's what they see. If they clicked on that added entry link, this is what they would see. They would see front end editing. Now, of the board info form, you might not be able to tell, but that ministry name at the top is not editable by the user. It's only able to be edited in the WP admin dashboard by an administrator level user. If you stop and think about it, we're doing a lot of filtering on specific names. They can't vary by a space or an abbreviation or anything, right? We have to have them be exactly the same in multiple locations. So we're putting them in there. They can't be edited. But this form gives the user to come back in and edit or update or change their information. Right? They can do that. When they click the update button at the bottom, they are redirected back to their landing page. Right? So the landing page is their kind of hub in this web app, essentially. They can go out and edit that entry at the top, and they can come back. Directly below this section is a Gravity view that displays the member of the board data. So the board member data, right? So there's a Gravity form for all of the information for each individual board member all across the whole organization. Now, on this page, you'll see a search bar there. That search bar is only allowing them to search within this board. It's limiting their search. They don't get to see all of the entries everywhere. They only get to see the entries that are for the Christian Board of Publication. Now, there are only 2 entries there right now in the example, but in real life with the client, there would be as many as 30 or 40 there. And so this really makes it very simple for them to come back. This is one of those reducing friction pieces, making it easy for the user to find what they need in terms of making changes. Each individual board member entry can be edited. You'll see the edit entry link there too. So for instance, maybe the board member has changed their age grouping by getting older, or maybe they've changed their length of service, whatever it is. An entry can be opened up for editing, and when it's opened for editing, it can also be deleted. So as people go off the board, they can be deleted as well. So this is what the shortcode for this particular Gravity view looks like. Again, in the Gravity view, I've already set the form that it's working with. This tells it to look for field ID 12 in the form. Only return the entries that have Christian Board of Publication as the value in that particular field. Note that there is a button at the bottom to add new nominees for serving on the board. That particular button has a string query in it that says you can go to add a new board member. You can go to the add new member data, but it already pre-populates field up number 12 with Christian Board of Publication so that it will only ever be associated with this landing page. Then finally, underneath all of that individual board data, we're showing the Gravity Forms bar charts in percentages of each of these items under gender. You can see all of the folks that are there. You can see age, and how long they've served, all of those demographic data pieces. All of these are created with the Gravity Forms polling add-on. This allows us to display for each board the accumulated percentages of all of those. Now, this is only displaying the information for this specific board. Now, in order to do that, we had to make one of those calculated choices. We had to do a wee bit of a hack on the Gravity Forms polls plugin. Unfortunately, it has to be done in the plugin itself, which could and has already once been overwritten in an update. So we have to have it. We have extensive documentation for me about how to remember to reinstall the hack when and if that happens again, right? So we've got all of that documented. But that's what's limiting this, to allow the board member, the staff member, to see only this particular board or committee. But note, we kind of made that calculated decision because the member information form and data is in one Gravity Form site-wide, which allows for the highest level administrators to see one big bar chart with all the demographic percentages for all the boards and committees. So it was a great way to do that trade-off of data for them to get the big picture of what they needed. So I know this is what the form is for the short code for that, where we've got the IDs in there and the search. And then, whoops, let's see, there we go. And then, so this is what it looks like in the block view. So you can see the block on the top that gives the ministry or board information, the one that has the search bar and the member information, the button to add a new nominee, and finally then all the Gravity Forms polling data. So if you are, I'm sure some people's eyes have glazed over at this point because that's a lot. But if you're starting to do more with Gravity Forms, first of all, Gravity Forms support offers some great support, and they are pretty good about bouncing ideas off, kind of helping point you in some good directions. But one of the really great places to get some ideas and some help, talk with other users about what you're trying to do, is to go to the Facebook user group for Gravity Forms. It's Gravity Forms and certified add-ons. So certified add-ons are some of those that we talked about beginning: Gravity View, Gravity Flow, etc. So you can go there. And there's some just super helpful folks there that can help point you in helpful directions if you get stuck trying to do some of these more complicated things. So I hope this has been helpful. Joanne said we should have an offer, and I can think of nothing more fun than to talk to you about what you would like to do about Gravity Forms. So I'm offering just a free 15-minute consult. So if you have some things you want to talk about related to Gravity Forms and doing some of these more complex things, you can go to bhmbizsites.com/talkgravity. That'll redirect you to my Calendly. I'm happy to chat with you about some of the things you might like to try and do with Gravity Forms. You can also DM me at Twitter. But I hope it's been helpful, and I hope I've piqued your interest, and most importantly, giving you some ideas of what you can do in the future for clients. Thanks.
Very awesome. 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 But I don't have any other words other than awesome. And I want to be very cognizant of your time and everyone who's listening's time. Do we have a couple of minutes for questions?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get straight to it. Our top voted question is the next one. How do you migrate forms that contain feeds from a development environment into a production environment?
Oh, carefully. So you can export forms, but I'm not sure if the feeds can be exported. We haven't done too much of that. Typically, we don't. We try not to set up too many feeds before we do the migration, the launch. Yeah.
Okay, and the next question we have, and we are getting so much love on the chat. You're getting so much love on the chat. It's so great to see.
Emperor of Gravity Forms. I see that.
Such great insight. The next question is, this is from Beth Livingston. I am currently trying to decide between Gravity Forms and Fluid Forms. Do you have any insight into the differences between the differences and why I should choose Gravity Forms? And just want to start this out with, obviously, but it's very biased.
I am, and I'll just say right up front, I haven't used Fluid Forms, and so I would say, you know, it's going to come down to what works for you, right? And if you, if what you need is, and what you think you will ever need is fairly simple and straightforward, then, you know, in some ways, a lot of the plugin forms are all going to offer some of the same basic functionalities, right? But if you see what we did today and you think you might need to do some of that eventually, I would say you probably, it's harder to make the switch, right? If you need to switch gears, right? So try to sort of imagine if you might need to switch. But I'm sorry, Beth, I don't really have any experience with Fluid Forms to be able to offer a comparison for you.
Next question, and thanks for Jamie for helping us out in the question. I don't know, toggle. I don't know what this is called. But also another question from Beth is, can Gravity Forms handle a quiz type thing? What kind of project manager are you? What with conditional logic and with a different redirect depending on the score?
Yep.
Yeah, and I think Jamie was also very helpful in the comment section, and he added a link to a blog post from Gravity Forms. So that question is answered right there. Next question is, what is the support like with Gravity Forms? Quick to respond?
Oh, well, you know, some of it just depends on, like, is it I'll just say this. All support for all plugins sometimes have days where they just get swamped, right? And that's that. So I'd say it's fairly quick. I mean, and
yeah, and it seems like Adam
sometimes
Jacoby,
I throw them really weird stuff, and you know, Chris is giving, you know, might give me a hard time, but you know, sometimes I throw really weird stuff and like, and it just I will say, it never fails that I'll sit down, I have a problem I can't figure out, and I'll sit down, and by the time I've typed it all out, like I'm like, oh, I didn't try this one last thing. Oh, that's what it was.
There you go.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and also in the comment section, again, in the question section, Adam Jacoby also shared his experience with having really good support response time, about 24 hours or less on business days, and that he hasn't had anything more urgent. So it has really worked well for him. So it's really good to hear other people chime into these questions so we can get different perspectives and different experiences as well. Another question that we have, this is from John. John Phillips, who is we also have a webinar with him in a couple of weeks. Instead of excluding the entire pages from caching due to a form being present, might Gravity Forms allow it to be loaded via Ajax after the page has rendered?
That's not a question for me. There are other people here who might answer that, but it would be really cool to do that, I think. That would make my life easier. But
maybe this is a question for Gravity Forms support.
Yep.
Thanks for the question.
Some of those. I see there are some of those people in the chat, but so maybe they're taking that on in terms of
Yeah, take some notes, guys. Awesome. And our last question is, so can Gravity Forms send data to advanced custom fields on a custom post type? Just to clarify.
Oh yeah.
Awesome, great. And also on the comment section, Jamie from Gravity Flow added a good resource for that. So that's awesome. Thank you so much to everyone who chimed in on the questions and helped each other out. I love that. I love this kind of I don't know, behavior. I don't know what to call it.
Yeah, no, that's great. It takes a community, and
Yes.
I would love to hear if this was helpful for you, and what kinds of things you think you might like to do. Just on Twitter, just kind of let me know what kinds of things it sparked your imagination with. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And can we remind everyone the link for
Yep. BHM
your
Biz Sites. You may put it in the chat. I could put it in the chat.
/ talk gravity. Every time I get the redirect to your Calendly immediately, so I'm just going to drop it there. I'm just going to drop your Calendly for a free 15-minute strategy call. Strategy consult with that. Yeah. Awesome. Well, one last question from Chris. Bet, are we going to need one of these per week to dig into? Oh, no, that was not a question. That was a statement.
I don't know. I think it would be kind of cool if Gravity Forms did, like, I mean, people talk about me being the emperor of Gravity Forms, but it's like, there are so many people out there doing so many cool things. I think even a once a month podcast that Gravity Forms did with interviewing different people with what they're doing would be super cool. So.
Yeah, with I think you did such a great job at showing all the different use cases. And I also come from a form background, and I was also at a form company once. And so it's really interesting to see the different ways people are using forms. And I thought I was kind of like done with that, but now I'm like, whoa, this is like still the gift that keeps on giving. So this was awesome.
You could build out a new onboarding process in within GoWP for your people with Gravity Form.
There you go. There you go. Thank you so much, Beth. Again, thank you so much for everyone who joined, and everyone. The chat was awesome, and the questions were great, and everyone who chimed in. This was such a great webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'll see you at the happiness hour this Friday. And if anyone wants to join our weekly happiness hour, I'm going to drop the link to our digital agency owners community, so y'all can join and we can talk about all the other things that all of the wins and struggles that we are all experiencing as digital agency owners. Again, thank you so much for joining, and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, you too.